Welcome to Turning the Tide with Candace Salima. I am coming at you from the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Today, I am very excited because we have a wonderful guest today named Janie Johnson. And let me tell you what caught my attention about this woman. She wrote a book called Don't Take My Lemonade Stand, An American Philosophy. Now, here's why it caught my attention. I live in Utah, and in Utah, we have a city called Alpine that sits on the point of the mountain. And in that city, they actually made it against the law for children to have lemonade stands. It was stunning, and no one could believe it had happened, but that's what the citizens of that city wanted, and there we were. And then, Janie, I am not kidding, exactly 3 or 4 days later, I noticed you on Twitter. And the name is Don't Take My Lemonade Stand. And I was like, oh, man, I have got to get this woman on the show.
Absolutely. It's just amazing how many examples government has provided for me for the title of my book.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and I loved your book, by the way. Let me read your bio real fast, and then we'll just get into the meat, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Okay, Janie Johnson is an American citizen. She is not a pundit, politician, political scientist, constitutional lawyer, political activist, or historian, and nor does she need to be. She is an informed voter who cares deeply about our country and its founding principles. Her brand of common sense conservatism focuses on children, patriotism, and optimism. Now, Janie, what was really neat about your book is I'm very active on Facebook, and I am a political activist, as a matter of fact. And I get attacked all the time by the far right, calling me a neocon. And then the liberals attack me because I'm a rabid conservative, and all I can think is, well, what's so wrong about wanting to abide by the rule of law in our nation and the U.S. Constitution? And what's so wrong with wanting to keep the republic? How does that make me rabid? And then I read in your book, Common Sense Conservative. I was like, ding, 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 that's me.
Yeah, absolutely. Common sense is what we all have. We're born with. We know what works versus what merely sounds good. And what our founders gave us over 200 years ago was this path of common sense, is that you can decide your own future depending on how hard you want to work. Because people have forgotten through the history of civilization, man has been born into a hole of poverty and despair where the only ways out were plunder, looting, raping, and pillaging to gain wealth. But what our founders gave us was a platform to climb out our Constitution, along with a ladder called our free market capitalism, and that it's up to each individual how high and how far they want to climb that ladder. And I personally love it when someone like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates climbs that ladder all the way to the top, because they provide us with a lot of cool stuff, and nobody got poor off of it. So we just need to keep government off our ladders, off the foundation what the ladder stands on, and quit greasing it up and throwing dirt on us, because as individuals, we can make our country great again.
Oh, we absolutely can. And as you state in your book, the only thing standing in the way, number one, is the federal government, and number two are the American people.
Yes, exactly. If we don't decide what we're going to do about our country, then there's other people who will. So we can either be the victims of these zealots, knaves, and windbags, or we can stand up and take a stand for our founding principles, strong defense, free market capitalism, and personal responsibility, among others.
Oh, yeah, without question. Now, your book, Don't Take My Lemonade Stand, it's really, this is what I loved about it, Janie, is it's written oddly for parents to speak to their children about what made this country great, about the Constitution, about the Revolution, the Founding Fathers, and everything leading up to now.
Exactly. Well, I didn't start out to write a book. I have an English degree from UCLA. I've traveled the world, been to communist countries, been to poor countries like Thailand, and I see what capitalism does. It allows for people to be successful, to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and to take care of the community and your society. But I didn't really want to write a book. They are a lot of work, as I've since found out.
Yes, they are.
My 10-year-old son, Sammy, asked me before the last presidential election, he says, well, Mommy, how do you know who to vote for? And I said, well, Sammy, whoever gives less money to the government, whoever makes government smaller. I thought that was a pretty good mommy answer. And then as our kids like to do, they ask, why? I was like, why? And I looked at him, he's staring at me, and I'm thinking, oh, I could ask him to Google it, or, I'm like, no, we have principles. This is very important. We have principles. We have free market capitalism. He looks at me. I said, we got to have a strong defense, or they'll just, what happens when they drop another bomb or some airplanes into some more, towers? And he's looking at me, and I said, we got to have good people, moral characters. We must do the right things. And he's looking at me. And then when I told my husband after he went off on the bus, I said, wow, it was really, and then my husband and I, we talked about 2 or 3 hours. We said, not only did Sammy need to know the answer, a better answer to this question, they're going to be voting soon. The other 3 boys also needed to know the answer to this question. And then as I began to research, trying to outline, get some points together so I could, not go off on tangents, and to really explain to the kids the important points of why it's so important to cast a constitutional conservative vote, based on conserving the Constitution and those values and principles found in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. I found it wasn't just my kids that needed to know, my girlfriends needed to know. Some of my husband's friends needed to know, because as they said, we had terrible history teachers. One of my friends said, I had a communist for a teacher. And so then I said, wow, I needed to remind everyone why America was great, and then give them the tools so they could teach their kids. And I had my friend, a former Disney illustrator, do 51 illustrations to create talking points. We're all busy, so, a parent could just talk about one point each day, and then there's parables for younger kids to explain why we must choose to do the right things. And then short chapters, and so you could just go and pick out something that is relevant or you wanted to know more about and remind ourselves why we believe the way we do, but more importantly, who is it that's trying to take away our values and take away our independence and our freedom and liberty.
Well, and that's the thing that I think is so intriguing, Janie, is because it is an answer that needs to be given to just about everyone in America, it seems. When we look at the condition that our country is in now, and we look at young people saying, well, what's so wrong with communism? I mean, what's so bad about it? And from my generation, I'm 48. The first time I was asked what's so bad about communism, I think my jaw hit the ground. I did not understand that they had been taught that communism was good.
Yeah, it's a funny story. When I was in Poland playing a professional tennis tournament, this is a story I tell my kids. I said, why is communism bad? Let me tell you why. The incentive and the reason to be innovative and productive, they're gone. This is if you live in a communist country, because my girlfriend there that I met, her mother did translations for American movies for the communist leaders. And so as a young child, she would like to go because she would go and find out the guy in charge of prices, the command and control of prices in Poland, because she and her brother wanted to find out which store was going to get toilet paper delivered to. And so they would find out, and they would go stand out there early the next morning to find out and stand in line and buy up all the toilet paper. And then they would make a necklace as a way for them to carry it, and they would go around hopping and skipping and singing songs because they had toilet paper. It made them feel important. And then they went around and in turn resold it, capitalism, and made money. And so I said, this is what your future is. The incentive to do better, the incentive for self-reliance is done, and to make yourself a better person and to live a better life. This is what the future is when you don't have that. You have toilet paper necklaces.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was speaking to the young man who asked me that question, I eventually it came to the point, and I said, do you not realize that in communist countries such as Russia and China, they take the children from their homes very, very, very early if they show any sign of promise, and they assign them a career at a very young age, 3, 4, 5. I remember watching the Olympics, and you will be able to understand this, Janie, and my mom explaining to me that those children had been taken from their parents very, very early and spent their entire lives training to be a gymnast, training to be a swimmer, training to be, whatever it may be. But that also applied to doctors, scientists, and then everyone else was left with basically the idea you weren't bright enough, you weren't smart enough to warrant the attention that these people are given, not realizing that those people had no freedom either. it gave, as you said, no incentive for pursuing a dream because there wasn't one.
Or their self-interest becomes different. My friends growing up, they had a Russian exchange student staying at their house. And they said, Alex, what do you want to be when you grow up? He goes, I want to be an engineer. Well, what kind of engineer? A vending engineer. And he says, why do you want to be a vending engineer? He goes, oh, my dad's a vending engineer. And we're like, oh, isn't that nice? And he says, well, what is it so that you like about vending engineers? He says, oh, because I get to work inside. And usually there's nothing to put in the machine, so you don't have to do anything and you stay warm. You don't have to work outside.
Oh, no.
So it's just sad when that is your goal in life, because there's no other incentive to go out and become great and passionate about something. And because what people don't understand, and they've forgotten what free market capitalism does, it allows you to provide a service or a product that society wants and then produce it efficiently that people will want to buy it. Therefore, you create, you can become rich if you can do a product or service, my book, that people actually want to buy, and then you actually get something in return that people want. So as Milton Friedman said, the best thing about free market capitalism is that no benefit, the transaction benefits both parties, or it doesn't happen.
Well, and the whole, looking at the entire mess, it behooves us as a nation, to the future of our nation, that our children begin to understand this and begin to understand why it is worth fighting for the Republic, the Constitution, and so on and so forth. Now, your book, Don't Take My Lemonade Stand, is the mission of it is kind of twofold. It's a call to action to the American people and to the parents, and it's to prepare our children for the future. Tell me how this book, can children read this book and enjoy it?
Yeah, my 10-year-old son at the time, he read the book. He didn't sit down and read it all at once. I kind of read it with him. And, first I made all four of us read it out loud, make sure everyone got it. And then I kind of knew my 10-year-old read it because he asked me, Mommy, what's a zealot? And I'm like, zealot? I go, oh, a zealot. They're a zealot who sees a lot of your money and they want it all. So it makes it interesting because some of the points in the book, they are hard to understand. The concepts are difficult because our children are living in an immediate age of internet and computer games. And to sit down and read and think and analyze to say, what do you mean? Not everybody doesn't have video games? Not everybody can just go and get McDonald's? We have food, we have clothes, we have shelter. What are you talking about? So as Americans, we've taken it for granted, a lot of what we have, the freedoms that we have, and we really need to go back and stress to our children the importance of why freedom is so special, and we need to cherish it, take care of it, and fight for it, and not give it up at the cheap price of rhetoric. Okay,
so tell me what it is that conservatism attempts to preserve. And what I mean by that, how did you explain it to your children, what you were trying to preserve?
Well, first off, I had to show them that what is conservatism. I asked my friends, what is a conservative? People don't know. And so I just said, it's very simple. We're just conserving those values and principles that were outlined in our Declaration of Independence and then formalized in our Constitution. They are the self-evident truth and unalienable rights that set us apart, that we get our rights from God. We don't get them from man. We look to our Constitution for our laws. We don't look to man to how they're going to interpret them. So say, you have to describe to your children the ideas why we picked the constitutional republic. And that when you go to a judge, you get laws that determine you're innocent until proven guilty. And there's so many things that we need to teach our kids. And that when you don't have a constitution and a republic, you get a democracy or mob rule, or out in the Wild West, you go out in 51 to 49, mob rule, and you're done. Where liberty is you actually get to present your case and you allow laws to determine your innocence and your guilt, actually. So it's just so much that we need to stress to our kids. Like I say, you can't do it in one sitting. And it's just a way to help kids develop their philosophy, which is just a big word for common sense. And our American philosophy, which has brought so many people out of poverty and despair and eradicated poverty like no other country in the history of mankind. And that way, so when they're 18, they can understand why it's so important to have their own philosophy, so they can have principles, so that they have a course of action to make decisions. And why it's so important that as a conservative, we believe in strong defense, which is the first principle in my book, and because it's in our Constitution, that if we don't have a country, there's nothing to defend. There are no values or principles. And then part two, if our country can't defend us, then we have the right to defend ourselves, the right to bear arms, and we need a judiciary and domestic tranquility, that we can go out and about in our daily lives and be free to go out and pursue our business and protect our home. And without those three first principles, and that's the role of government, is just to protect the rights in our Constitution. It's not to do anything more than that.
That's true. That is an excellent answer, Janie. Now, I have... You're welcome.
It's hard to explain to your kids. That's why, some get it through pictures, some read, some you just have to talk to them. But this is just so important that people really need to take the time and discuss it with our kids.
Well, that's what I think your book provides, because not only do you have the text, you also have pictures. So that depending on how you learn, you're going to learn one way or the other.
Yeah, it's just so important. The basic point, like I for my kids, is about the importance of free market capitalism, but more important when you don't have free market capitalism, and simply what that is you're allowing the free market to determine the price and the wages of a product or a service. And when you don't have free markets, millions and millions of people making billions of decisions determining that dozen eggs cost $2.12, you have central planners, you have statists who believe they can determine that price better than anyone else. Therefore, you don't have personal property rights. You don't have anything. And then our country will soon be a socialist leaning towards a communist system. So free market capitalism is so huge that we really need to stress to our kids and teach them why it's so important.
And if we don't, they're not going to understand it, because they are living in the byproduct of people who have fought for that. And they are enjoying all these things, and so they don't understand. They truly cannot begin to comprehend why those of us like you and me, Janie, are fighting so hard to preserve that which is great here in America. And I hear so many say, and I'm going to give you an exact quote, that the U.S. Constitution is an archaic document that has no place in a modern America. That was one. Number two, history is boring. It doesn't matter. And I love to quote Santayana when he says, and I'm paraphrasing, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. One of the questions you have for kids in your book is, why do we have to learn from history?
History teaches us what works versus what merely sounds good. And not only that, history is what we all share as a man, as a humankind, as a race. And we see, if we learn how history and how people are free or enslaved, as people today are still enslaved. And I get this as a conservative, you want to go back to the days of slavery. And gosh, if I have that one more time.
Gosh.
And I say, absolutely not. That was what was so awesome about our founding principles. They gave us a way to end slavery, and it was the United States of America that ended slavery. It took a war and a lot of good men to end it. And now if we could just do that across the world, that would just be amazing. And so I just feel it's so important for history. And it is boring. You have some of these teachers, but look at a video game. My son has a game on Istanbul and the Byzantine era, this Assassin's Creed. And he's learning all kinds from his world history class. And he says, oh my God, that's in my video game. So there is a way to make history entertaining and getting the right teacher. And so it's just unheard of that we have to go back and make history boring. And also that quote is on the gates in Auschwitz in Poland, because my friend also made me go there, and she makes every American that comes to take pictures and to tell everyone, because she's afraid that people will forget and history will be forgotten. And as we see Iran with a nuclear weapon today, people have not learned from history.
No, they haven't. And it is sad that you even hear some people denying that the Holocaust ever happened, which I sometimes when I am presented with such atrocity and such stupidity or evil, whichever the case may be, I often don't know how to respond. I'm like, okay, well, we've got all this history and all these people who were there and everyone who saw it, and we have video and we have this and we have that. Oh, it's all made up.
Yeah, it's amazing how people want to tell the big lies, because bold and big lies are believable lies. And so when people are not educated and they do not read history, they can be gullible and be taken in by it.
Yeah, and that's the sad part. If we do not educate ourselves, we will be deceived, and we will not be able to determine that which is good for our nation and good for us, as opposed to that which sounds good. And usually what sounds good is bad. Now, I know you have limited time today, Janie. So I want to ask this last question, because this is a drum I beat all the time. And one of the questions you have that parents should ask their children, or kids, you call it questions for kids, but I'm assuming, I don't know. Anyway, the question is,
Yeah. It was my indirect way of trying to get people to start thinking for themselves, no matter what their age, and so they're not so affronted if you say, questions. But it's for kids. They're like, oh, let me read this as I'm going to ask my kids, and then it makes them, when they read it, think, oh, how will I answer that? And then all the answers, of course, are in the book. It's not tricky.
Oh, no, it's not. The book's fabulous, Janie. I'm recommending it to everyone. Yeah, common sense. That seems to be lacking in a lot of people these days. Anyway,
our Constitution is only 4,400 words, so, it's not that difficult.
No, it's not. It's really not. The question is, can regular people make a difference in our country?
Absolutely. We must all get informed. And that's why I've taken to Twitter. I'm on @JJAuthor on Twitter, because once people are getting informed and they get educated, and then we get engaged, and we can all pull on the rope in the same direction and focus on what makes America great, our American exceptionalism and our Constitution. People, we have more power than we think, and our country is great. Our founding fathers laid down the path. All we need to do is get back on it. And if we all do it together, we will win, and we can win in 2012, not just the presidency, but the Senate also. And we can get back into fiscal responsibility. It is not hard. It's very simple. We, as everyday people, do it. It's not anti-poor when we live within our means, and it's not anti-poor to save for a rainy day. And we can go, there's great ideas out there. We're Americans. The Mac Penny plan would be a great place to start. Go back to 2008 spending limits, and not raise the rate of the baseline budgeting on each item in our budget, but to actually go back to 2008 spending levels and then cut 1% from every program. And not even do we have to cut a program. And in 7 years, our budget would be balanced. Or we could just have a balanced. We could have a balanced budget amendment, but that would just probably create government accounting rules that don't apply to everyday people, but for government, so that would just be a trick. Or we could just say our congressmen can't run for re-election unless they pass a balanced budget, and it would be balanced tomorrow. So there's very simple ways we can get our government back in line and working for us instead of us working for them, when all they do is want more and more taxes. And the question isn't whether we should pay more taxes. The question is, if we gave government more taxes, would they spend the money wisely? No.
No, because they're not spending what they have wisely. Excellent point. It is something that I strongly believe in, that if we do not have an engaged citizenry, we can and will end up kissing America goodbye. And for me, America is the greatest nation on the earth. This Constitution, this government that our founding fathers gave us is so incredible for people who are self-motivated, for people who want to pursue a dream and are willing to work hard enough, for people who can start small businesses and small businesses that grow into big businesses and everything else that is just so fabulous about this nation. There is no dream that is restricted from us, unless, like, for instance, I wanted to sing and dance on Broadway, but I don't have the vocal chops. So there you go. Sometimes, no matter how much you want something, you can't have it.
We don't all have the same talents.
Yeah,
no, that's for sure. But when there's always risk in life. There's no way, no matter what a liberal says, you cannot eliminate risk. But the way we can cope and become a better people, a better country, is because the reward is so great. You know, if your company fails tomorrow, you can declare bankruptcy and start another one the next day. There are ways to keep going and to try to make yourself better. But when you take away the reward and the risks are always there, it's just a bad recipe for stunning economic growth.
Yeah, it is. And that's exactly what's happened. It has stunted economic growth. And I'm so grateful to you, Janie, for writing this book, Don't Take My Lemonade Stand, An American Philosophy. To all my Turning the Tide listeners, this is a great book. It should be in every home in America, and parents should be reading it to their children. And it is written in such a way that it will foster conversation between you and your children and help you to teach them the principles, the constitutional principles that have provided the greatness for this country. It is what makes America great. America doesn't make the Constitution great. The Constitution makes America great. And so, Janie, thank you. What is your website so people can go to your website?
It's www.jjauthor.com, and I'm on Twitter at jjauthor, and my book is on Amazon. And my new book just came out, Candace.
Really?
Obama 2012 Slogans Rewritten. Yeah, it's just time for Americans to analyze what President Obama has done and what he's not done and decide what we're going to do about it. And so I've just done a funny book to expose his true nature. You know, his uber-liberal philosophy is so often hidden by his clever rhetoric. And so I've rewritten his slogans to reflect what Obama is, not what he pretends to be.
Okay, I will send you the address of my new show. You know, Turning the Tide is I was with Buy Back America when I first ran across you. I have my own show now, Turning the Tide.
Oh, excellent. Good for you.
Yes. I will send you the address. Send me that book. We'll have you back on, and we'll get that promoted as well, okay?
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right, Janie, thanks for taking the time. You have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Vito.